icing cakes. After that, I know you'll be ready to take on the challenge of brown butter cranberry gingerbread upside down cakes. And I serve that with a brown butter caramel sauce. Definitely a restaurant-worthy dessert. And for that little something extra, I'll take the lemonberry saucing cakes, add a meringue layer and a bumbleberry sauce to turn that into a plated dessert. So let's start with the basics, the classic pineapple upside down cake. And it does begin with the bottom. We start at the bottom and build up. And the first thing we have to make is the sauce that cooks with the fruit. So I'll start by melting a 1/4 cup of butter in a skillet. I'm actually going to bake the whole cake in the skillet. And as the butter melts, I'll add 2/3 of a cup of packed dark brown sugar. You can cook this butter-sugar combination on relatively high heat. You want to wait until it's nice and bubbling and melted. It's interesting, as the butter and sugar are melting and just starting to bubble now, you can actually see that the brown sugar is still gritty. But by adding just 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, it hisses and bubbles up, but it also turns that brown sugar fluid, and that's what creates almost like a caramel sauce that's going to be at the bottom of the cake, ultimately as part of the top of the cake. So now that the brown sugar is nice and smooth, I can add the fruit. So I'll just pull the whole skillet off the heat, and I've got fresh pineapple slices, and just arrange them closely together in the pan. That way the juices start coming out of the pineapple and melding with the brown sugar itself. So I'll just let this sit and cool while I prepare the cake batter. It really is a simple cake batter to make, and this is why it's a good place to start to get a handle on making upside down cakes. I start with 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. That adds a nice tang and richness without adding a whole lot of fat. I'll use the same measure for 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil. A teaspoon of vanilla, and then 3 eggs. So I'm stirring all my liquids together. And the dry ingredients, which I need to sift together, include 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour and 3/4 of a cup of sugar. For a little leavening, I'll add first a teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Also, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And for a little accent, just a little grated nutmeg, only just a touch. Give this a little sift, and I add this all at once to the buttermilk base. So as you can see, it's a very simple cake batter to put together. It bakes up a little bit dense so that it can actually hold the baked pineapple and that brown sugar layer that ultimately sits on top. I'll give it a quick little whisk just to work out any lumps you may see. And then the last addition, 1/2 cup of sweetened flaked coconut. And just stir that to blend it in. And now I'm ready to add this on top of the pineapple slices. And you can see that the brown sugar layer has sort of set a little bit. That makes it easier to fill the pan. Now the challenge in adding cake batter to an upside down cake can be adding it in a way so you don't shift or move the fruit layer around. So to do this, I simply use a ladle and gently spoon it over the fruit. That way the fruit doesn't shift, and when you flip your cake right side up, everything is in place and perfect. Now this bakes for 30 to 35 minutes in a 350 oven. So drop that in. And I have one that's been baking for 1/2 hour already. It's ready to come out, but it has to cool for 1/2 hour before I flip it upside down. I love the golden brown that this cake turns when it bakes. Hiding that fruit underneath. There we go. So this cake is the cake I pulled out 1/2 hour ago. And a few tips to turn out your upside down cake easily. First, it'll come out far easier and intact if you let it cool. Then I just run palette knife around the outside to loosen any edges. Place your cake plate over in one quick move, and then lift the pan up to reveal that beautiful, gooey, fruity top to the cake. I love to serve upside down cake warm, but you can serve it at room temperature at this point. Bottom, then when you invert the cake, the bottom becomes the top. I started by showing you the basics and a favorite, classic pineapple upside down cake. Now that you've got the fundamentals covered, I can move you into lemon berry saucing cakes. Now this batter takes a little more finesse. Now where that pineapple upside down cake was more of a rustic style of cake, actually baked in a skillet, this is an individual dessert. And I've got 4 ramekins that have been greased and then the inside lined with sugar. That way, the upside down cake turns out easily. And I've got it in a roasting pan because I want to cook these with a water bath around it to gently cook it. The cake batter itself creates its own sauce. So instead of starting by making a sauce, I'll start with the berries. I've got a mix of raspberries and blueberries and blackberries, a cup's worth that I'll cover the bottom of each dish with. Nice even layer. Now the batter starts quite straightforward. A half a cup of sugar, and part of that sugar is what melts into the sauce as the cake bakes. I have 3 tablespoons of flour and just a pinch of salt. I'll stir that to combine. Grab a lemon, and just grate in a little bit of zest. And I'll add to this 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. 2/3 of a cup of milk. I'll just whisk this together and you can see how fluid it is. Now for a single egg. I'll separate the egg, so I'll have the white in a separate bowl and add the yolk to this mixture. Just whisk the yolk in and then grab a new whisk. And because it's just 1 egg white, you can whip it easily by hand until it reaches a soft peak. Now I can whisk this into the base batter. As you can see, this cake batter is more fluid than any other typical cake batter, but that's where the magic happens, because as it bakes in the oven, the moisture draws to the bottom, the egg whites lift to the top, so you get a cake layer with a lemon, almost curd-like sauce underneath, and it cooks through with the berries. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, part of the trick, even though this is a soft batter, is to gently spoon it over the berries. That way it keeps the berries in place as it bakes. So you can see with this different style of cake batter, where that little added finesse is needed. Right? So these are ready to bake. 35 minutes in a 350 oven. There we go. It's easier to fill your roasting pan with water while you're at the oven. So I've got a tea kettle with hot water. I fill it to come halfway up the dishes. That gently cooks the cake and encourages the separation of cake and sauce. Ooh, they really puff up. And you check the doneness the same way you do a sponge cake. You just press the top. When it springs back, you know they're done. Now, these cakes are too hot to take out of their dishes right now. I have some that have been taken out of the water bath and cooled. So to take it out, run your spatula around the inside of the dish, put the plate over, invert, and reveal that beautiful lemon curd filling with the berries hiding just underneath. Isn't that absolutely decadent? How lovely. And the berries are hiding there between the sauce and the cake, just like an upside down cake should be.
If you're